The Woman Silicon Valley Fears. This title has been attached to you, but you were just saying that you make nothing of it. It's meaningless to you.
No, the thing is that we need a change in behavior. When we find that something is illegal, then we need a change in behavior. And the point is that you shouldn't fear a law enforcer. You should be afraid not to do the right thing, which is, of course, to play by the rule book. That's what you should be afraid of, because it's in yourself you find the strength and the capabilities and the willingness to do something else.
So you've done an awful lot over the last 18 months, let's say. Does that mean that in Silicon Valley there isn't enough fear about not doing the right thing?
Well, probably over sort of our history, when our societies were changing, you would find different, not only sentiments and opinions and facts of a case, because societies are changing. And probably you'd also had this sort of in between when we had the first steam machines, when we had the first other kinds of technology that changed our societies. So in that respect, I think that there's nothing new, but it's just very, very fast.
And big as well, and I think this is a really important point. So let's talk about Apple. That was a big fine. Oh, no, sorry, not a big fine, a big tax reclamation.
Yes, unpaid taxes to be paid.
Yes.
Unfortunately, some of us know it, but just not 13 billion.
Why was that so big?
Well, it's of course a reflection of the fact that this is a very big company. And if it's a very big company and you pay very, very little in taxes, then the unpaid taxes, of course, amount to something.
And also, I guess because it goes back a long way.
Well, we have the rule that we can only go back 10 years and say, well, within this time frame, you'll have to pay back taxes if someone has been giving you a selective advantage. Then this government will have to claim it back to taxpayers in the country. And we can go back 10 years.
Tim Cook, I'm sure you know, called that judgment total political crap. What did you think when you heard that?
Well, the thing is, I don't think much about politics as such, because it has no room. In our working processes, we have the chief economist team, who are independent to advise us, and we have our legal service, who advises us as well. Because eventually, our cases will have to stand up in court. And courts will hear nothing about politics. They want the facts of the case, the evidence, the jurisprudence. This is what they want to hear. And we would completely delegitimize what we're doing and what predecessors has been doing and what successors will be doing if we allowed politics to interfere with our work.
The Amazon case, the recent Amazon case, was in some ways very similar. And in that case, it was a deal with Luxembourg that was at issue rather than a deal with Ireland. When you look at these cases, are you really aiming them at the country or at the company?
Well, these cases, when it comes to selective advantages, they are aimed at countries. Because these are rules to say that in Europe we don't only take offense when one company is treating another company in a way that's illegal. We also look into if governments are sort of joining up with companies, which makes it more difficult for other companies. And this is sort of the European specificity, that we also see that sometimes government actions can make it very, very difficult for businesses to compete on the merits. And this is why we take issues with countries when it comes to state aid.
Apple hasn't paid, and Ireland don't seem to be asking for the money back. I know you told them to hurry up recently. What's going on there?
Well, the thing is that we've had an issue with Starbucks in the Netherlands and with Fiat in Luxembourg and with 35 multinationals in Belgium in a full scheme. And in Belgium, in Luxembourg, in the Netherlands, there's been recovery. Companies have paid their taxes as they should. And then, of course, when some countries do it, well, then everyone will have to do it. So we cannot just sit and wait. We'll have to do something. Of course, I respect that it is slightly more complicated to recover 13 billion than 200 million or 20 million, something like that. But still, in order to restore a level playing field, the recovery has to take place.
So when will the recovery take place by?
Well, hopefully sooner rather than later, because the Irish are setting up a methodology to figure out, well, how to keep 13 billion while the court case goes on.
Now, let's talk about Google, because this is a case of a really different kind, because this is about antitrust. That case was about just shopping, one particular thing, but in your view, it merited another really big fine in this case, 2.4 billion euros. Yeah, why was that so big?
Well, what we find to be illegal behavior, a misuse of a dominant position to promote itself and demote competitors in the shopping comparison market, that has taken place in all the markets where you find Google Shopping. And this means that it's all of Europe that has been affected. In some countries for a shorter period of time than in other countries. But when you have such a broad infringement, well, then also the fines becomes, quite heavy.
So this case has been rumbling on, for a long time. Google's appealed. It looks set to carry on for quite a while longer yet. Does that concern you, that this whole process is taking an unfairly long amount of time for a company?
Well, yes, I think this is the biggest challenge for antitrust. Not sort of in the fundamentals, because I think in the fundamentals the motives are the same as they were back in the days, when you're cutting corners and doing something that you shouldn't. But our challenge is to speed up, and then never to compromise on the quality of our casework, because this casework will have to stand up in court. And people, of course, have the full right to defend themselves. So we have to do sort of two things at the same time to make completely sure that you can defend yourself, that the quality of our casework is impeccable, and to speed up at the same time. Because consumers may be suffering if businesses don't innovate, if companies die and cannot show their produce, their services to potential customers.
Google's proposed some remedies, because the way this case works, for anyone who doesn't know, is that Google has to come up with the solutions, and you've laid down the framework. Google's proposed some answers. What do you make of them?
Well, so far we haven't taken a decision yet. The decision says, well, you have to pay a fine, a set of 2.4 billion euros.
Have they paid yet?
Yes, that has been brought in order. You have to cease and desist and apply a principle of equal treatment. What you do to yourself, you should also do to others. And every 4th month, we need to have a report about your compliance. But at the same time, we're also looking into how does this work. And we have had a public tender for expertise. It is KPMG and Mavens who are helping us out, because they are experts in this field, in order for us also to get our own view about what is going on. And of course, I also meet with market participants as to how they see this happening. Does it work for them in order for us eventually to see if we find that Google is in compliance with the decision?
Because what Google's proposed is that in its shopping bar, formerly that was all Google ads, essentially. Now they're going to let people bid to have their products there. So people are paying to be on the same footing as Google. That can't be what you're aiming for, right?
Well, the point is that it's not the auction in itself, because an auction can be a way of doing this. It's how it's working, and that we are in the process of establishing. Does it work the way that Google has put this remedy into place? And
the basic philosophy, the basic principle underpinning this particular case is that Google is a monopoly in search. That's your belief, if I understand correctly.
Yeah, we call it that they're a dominant company. And the thing is, and this is one of the things that I have learned over the years, that it's not just your intuition That just because you have 90% of the market, it doesn't necessarily, in a legal term, means that you're dominant. But now also in legal terms, we have established that Google is a dominant company. And the thing is that if you're dominant, and you're welcome to grow a dominant company in Europe, we have no ban of monopolies. You can be, if you have the ambition and the skills and customers like you, you can grow a dominant company, but you cannot not misuse your powers. Because if you're dominant, well, then competition, of course, is somewhat weakened. So you get a special responsibility that you cannot misuse these powers in your own market or in any other market. And this is what we have found that was happening.
So I'd like to talk a bit about your kind of broader philosophy here. So when we met in January, you said technology is in many respects an enabler for an open, transparent society, but also an enabler for supervision to a completely unforeseen degree, and for commercializing personal space to an unforeseen degree. I mean, would you consider yourself a techno pessimist or a techno optimist?
Oh, I'm definitely a techno optimist. I think we can do amazing things. But the thing is that, in my experience, if a thing has great potential, there is also a risk of great downsides, so to speak. And I think coming from sort of a truly, really enthusiastic, wow, decade, we're moving into waters where we are somewhat more cautious. Also because now we have seen all the problems of the really bad stuff, of cybercrime, hacking, countries being sort of stopped basically by hackers. So I think we get sort of a more balanced view. But basically, I still think that we can do amazing things with technology.
So Facebook, Google, and Twitter, currently testifying in Congress right now. Do you think that they are a threat to democracy?
Well, I think they are an enabler of democracy. But what we see in these months and years is that they can also be used against our very basic beliefs in democracy. And one of the things I find to be sort of a challenge for every one of us is that the very basic of democracy, that we meet in public space, and you say your thing based on your beliefs and your facts, and they can be fact-checked and counter-argued, and everyone can listen in and make up their own minds. If we privatize this space so that no one can fact-check and no one can counter-argue, because it's just you and you and you, and you get a private messaging instead of having a debate in public space. That I find to be a challenge for all of us, how to renew our democracy so it remains a thing that takes place in public.
Because that's actually, when you think about it, a real challenge to the internet as it currently exists. Because basically, the internet is a private space. We're on Facebook, private company, Google, private company, Twitter, other things owned by Facebook. What does this other public internet even look like?
Well, I don't know, because if I knew, I would make it.
Is one part of it that they're all private companies, but they've been broken up and they're much smaller?
Well, I don't think it's the size that's the problem in itself. It is how size is being used. And for instance, for me, the Google case is also about who is to make the choice. Because if you see this combination of promoting yourself and demoting others, so if you want to compare prices, well, what you find is Google Shopping comparison, Google Shopping. You have to go to page 4 on average in your search results if you want to find another price comparison service. Have any of you ever been to page 4 in your search results? Yes? I would like to meet you. Because in general, it never happens. And this means that Google has, so to speak, chosen themselves, instead of me as a consumer to choose what price comparison service I want to use. And I think that I, as a consumer, should be the one to choose.
So one argument that's quite current at the moment is that this is classic monopolistic behavior. And big companies will behave like this as part of their nature. And that's why a lot of people are saying we should split them up. Split up Facebook or Amazon. I mean, this would more or less fall under your role. I mean, what do you make of this argument? Does it even reach your ears?
Oh yes, indeed, because it's very much debated and has been debated also in the European Parliament. So our public representatives, they take this debate very seriously and go into it in order to figure out what to do. But it is very, very, very far-reaching to split up a company. And I think that it is quicker and for many reasons also better to say, well, we expect a behavior that allows companies to compete on the merits with and against you, instead of starting splitting up a company by political decision.
With that option, do you foresee a future in which that might happen? Or is that somewhere towards which we're heading?
Well, it may become a habit, but if I could foresee the future, I wouldn't be here either. I would make a business out of it.
Fair enough. There are people in this audience, I'm sure, who are
already
doing that.
There.
We're here in the UK. I know you were really shocked about Brexit. How are you feeling about it now?
Well, when it happened, it was kind of a Bridget Jones situation. Well, you know, in your bed, eating ice cream out of the box.
Okay, I was wondering which aspect of Bridget Jones. I'm with you.
Yes. But then, you know, sort of literally, having slept on it, everything looks different the next morning. And now, you know, we have prepared for the negotiation. We have a very, very skilled, competent negotiator, Michel Barnier. It seems as if everything he has done in his life has just led to this point where he's the chief Brexit negotiator on our side. So you know, things has calmed down and it's much more sort of pragmatic. This is something that we have to solve.
I wondered, did you see the Uber decision in London?
No, I don't think so.
There was a case of Uber being denied its license, really because of allegations that it was an unfit and proper company. Mm-hmm. But I guess the bigger question, and this must have crossed your mind, given everything that swirls around Silicon Valley firms, do you think that they have an ethics problem?
But I don't think that you can say that in general. Because again, the potential of having a much better use of resources, of having a true sharing economy, where you contribute also into this economy with paying taxes, ensuring your customers, enabling workers, employees to have decent working conditions, well, it's a great opportunity. I think on average, a car is in use like 5% of its life. Most of the time, it's just sitting in the street. And of course, some cars are beautiful, but that's not the point. So a lot of good things could happen if we had a real sharing circular economy. And this is not about ethics. This is about figuring out how to be a corporate citizen. One
question that often comes up around these debates is that policymakers are just too distant from the complex tech or even the regular world of technology. I mean, how do you stay in touch? I know you're a Google user, but also a Bing user, maybe one of the few. I know you use...
Yeah, well, if we match up, you went to page 4, we will be a unique couple in the world.
How else what other technology are you using, and how do you stay in touch with what's going on in this very fast-moving world?
Well, to some degree I do, to some degree I don't. I have a lot of apps.
Oh, well, we were talking about this earlier.
Yes,
the shocking revelation.
You think I'm so embarrassing.
Well, you explain. I wouldn't do it justice.
No, it's just I have a lot of apps, and I can never find them. And then, you know, we have more intelligence as that one. So I color organize them. And it's working beautifully. Well, it looks good, and you can remember where they are. So, you know, free advice. No, I have too little time to explore. But I try to keep up. Mostly search engines, different services. I find that actually the European tech scene is becoming more and more and more interesting.
Where does this all end? This conflict between tech and politics and tech and regulators. What is the good place that we get to?
But to some degree, there is not a conflict. Because in other areas we work beautifully together. Like I have colleagues of mine who work with against hate speech, recruiting into terror or other bad things, in order to have a virtual world that is as safe as our analog world. Because what is not accepted here among ourselves, of course, should not be accepted in the digital world either. And there we have a very strong cooperation with the very same companies where I have to take decisions with colleagues to send them a fine. So it's all about behavior. And what role will you play in our society, especially when you have this privilege as a company to be part of forming our societies. Like they say in Denmark that youth crime is falling. It is as low as ever. Basically, it's my generation who are the criminals, but it's as low as ever. And they say that one of the reasons are that they are all on their smartphones. They don't have time to steal.
And hang on, this is a good thing, right?
Yes, it's a good thing.
Okay.
It is a good thing. So, you don't know where this will end, and we will make enormously good things in health, in transportation, in traffic, in coming together. We will develop our democracy, and hopefully we will get in control of all the downsides, because they are obviously there.
One downside, obviously, that has sort of sprung up with horrible force is this notion of fake news.
Yes, that is absolutely terrible, and that sort of, show us that you can never compromise on critical thinking. That is something that has to be taught every generation, that you have to think for yourself, can this be right? And if it cannot be right, then it's probably wrong. But the other thing also I think that comes to mind, but this is closer to home where I work, is that we really truly need an innovative tech scene. Because part of hopefully the good side of the Google decision is that many more companies say, well, then I will invest my time and my resources and my money in innovating because I can be found. And if we are to reach the potential, of course, we need innovators.
The great popularizer of that term is Donald Trump. When you see what's going on in the US at the moment, as a former politician, you held high office in Denmark. What do you think when you see him? I asked that question with complete neutrality, I'll have you know.
Do you expect me to answer that?
Yes.
Well, I see very little of him. I see quite a lot of the satire.
But you must see his tweets, you must see him on the television.
No, I don't. I have detoxed.
A Trump detox?
Yes.
And how's that working out for you?
It works beautifully. It's another piece of free advice. No, the thing is that I took myself in following the US election campaign with an interest as I have never followed anything before. And I had to detox because I have a day job. And it is much better because if the news is important, they will reach you. And for us, we have a Europe to build and to develop and to change. And I think we should do that ourselves. The US will not do that for us.
Well, and one reason why is because they have an extremely different attitude towards antitrust and regulation of this kind. Do you feel as if Europe is drifting away from the United States?
No, I don't. First of all, we actually took the concept of antitrust and merger control from the US when the European community was founded. because our founders, they saw what happens if the market is not regulated one way or another. The paradox is, of course, that if you want a free market, if you want competition on the merits, then you have to intervene. And they gave us the tools to do that, and they have learned that from the US. And we have a very, very strong cooperation with US counterparts, both the FTC and the DOJ. And when I was there, it was in September, I sensed that they have a renewed debate. A Democrat, Amy Klobuchar, has tabled 2 new proposals on antitrust. On the Republican side, they are debating things more intensively, I think, that they have done before. It was part of the election campaign. Antitrust, I can't remember when that has happened before. So I think that in the US, they have another discussion that they had just a couple of years ago. I don't know what they will conclude. And this is not for me, obviously, but it's very interesting to see that they have renewed the debate about antitrust, concentration, business power, and we'll see how it ends.
Because there has been some strong words said between the US regulators and European ones. Do you think things are moving in a different direction, or at the very top, is there still quite this tension, let's say?
Well, you know, they say it takes 2 to tango, but it also takes 2 to have a conflict. And we don't have a conflict with the US. Of course, I take it extremely serious when people say that we have a US bias. So I've been going through decisions and our statistics to see, well, do we find bias? And I simply don't find it. Not in our fines, not in our decisions, not in our merger control. There is a US university that's been going through thousands of merger decisions. They don't find a bias either. So, of course, it's very important that there is no bias, and it's important to take it seriously if there is an argument that we have a bias. But the thing is, we don't.
Thinking of the current situation, I feel like a lot of us have this fear that things are spinning out of control. Do you feel like that? That everything is losing its mooring?
But this is why we do something about it.
As in, you do feel like that, but you're able to take action.
But this is what I find that change is about. And when I look at politics in Europe, and when I meet people, I find a lot of people who has nothing to do with the tech world, and then they have the same feeling, which is why we have to also renew the way we talk about what we do, so that we can change this. Because if I am to give a speech sort of instantly, it would be let's get at it, because the to-do list is so long.
And what does getting at it mean? For anyone out there, what could they do?
But you all have your ideas. You have amazing business ideas. You have businesses that thrive. You are entrepreneurs. You are working with other people. But we also, I think, each and every one of us has decided to say, well, I want to engage in my community. I was at a competition conference just last week, and the organizers have had Syrian refugees do the lunch. And I think that's a very good sort of sign of, yes, we do competition law, and these are very important, very tricky, very specific legal discussions. But we also have a side who says that, well, we want to help Syrian refugees to get something to do. And if things are getting more difficult and one is losing the foothold, then the important thing is that to talk about it, to realize that other people feel the same way, and we can do something about it.
So my final question then would be, I guess it's appropriate to end on a hopeful note. What is your hope for the resolution of this current techno-political conflict that we seem to be immersed in?
We need a bigger ecosystem. We need many more businesses in the tech world, because our societies are digitalizing in every aspect. Agriculture, health, transportation, learning, everything is digitalizing. So we need an ecosystem that is much more diverse, much more manifold. We need more women in tech. We need several generations in tech. We need to make the ecosystem bigger. Also to make sure that it's not the US and Europe, it is US and Europe and African countries and Asian countries. We need to make the ecosystem bigger in order for many more people to thrive in tech and to give us many more and much better solutions.
I'll sign up to that. Margrethe, thank you as always. It's great to see you.
It was a pleasure to be here. And the next time the other mic will work, right?
Exactly.
Excellent.
Great.